Welcome to the Connection Codes podcast. This is the podcast where we break open our emotions that take us from being disconnected to connected in our relationships and in ourselves. I am your host, Tara Wages, and I am sitting here with Dr. Glenn Hill, who is a marriage and family therapist, clinical sexologist, and his incredible wife, Phyllis Hill. And together, they created and founded the Connection Codes, which is a set of proven tools that helps couples, not just couples, but all people, conquer conflict in less than 4 minutes. And at the end of this episode, you'll actually get to hear them use one of their tools in real time. I am excited about today's episode. We were just talking about how we can experience intense emotions in different ways. And we were talking about a situation this weekend specifically where Phyllis was experiencing emotion in a different time frame than what Glenn is experiencing it. And just this weekend, I was in conversation with someone who was explaining that he just really struggles identifying what his emotions are because he doesn't feel them in real time yet. And we were just discussing why that is and what that looks like and how we meet there in the middle.
Yeah. Well, hello, world.
Hi, friends.
Excited to be here.
Well, it's interesting in how through this podcast we have shared multiple times conflicts that Glenn and I have. And this was another one of those that happened Sunday night. And kind of to give you the background on just the story, we had a very busy weekend. We had a couples intensive, 8 couples that flew in, and we poured into them. It was just a magical experience on our property here in Tennessee, in our home. It was a catered event, so it was a very big, elaborate deal, and very exhausting. I'm, again, as a tasker, very much in tune to the tasks of what has to happen and how to keep it all rolling. So when the day was over, one of the things we love to do is just go to the movies to just veg out. That's our vegging out, is to go to the movies. So we went to the movies Sunday night, came home very exhausted for sure. And we had had several phone calls that day after the event that were kind of like big deals, like some changes within connection codes, some big things that need to adjust. And in the moment, I really truly was just flooded with joy. Like I'm good. And one of them, our son, was like, "Hey, when can we talk?" And I'm like, "Talk about what?" That was the phone call. And he's like, "Well, I know that, maybe right now is not a good time." And I said to him, "Well, just give me the topic." And he goes, "Well, are you sitting down?" And I said, "Well, yes, I happen to be sitting down right this minute." So he just starts kind of laying out some changes that need to happen and are going to happen. And in the moment, I really did feel just joy, like, okay, all right, And then he goes, "Well, I've got some more." And I'm like, "Okay, just give it to me." And he goes, "Well, are you sitting down?" And I was like, "Well, at this moment, I'm actually not. I'm standing, but it's fine. Like, just say what you need to say." And he did. And I also was like, "Okay, I hear you. I get that. It's a lot to think about, but okay." And then we are headed to the movies. And I think for whatever reason, I don't think we're still talking. I think it was a new phone call. So in this phone call, he said, "Hey, what was your experience about the whole weekend? Like, how do you feel about the whole weekend?" And I said, "Well, it was incredible, but I do think we missed on some things. We didn't have enough help. And so I had to do a lot of the, pulling together, making the coffee, running it up our hill, which is, you're huffing and puffing by the time you get up to our pavilion." And so I'm expressing just the logistical side of this weekend where we really needed more help. So I'm almost pointing out each time that was a real pain point for me. And at one point, and Sky's tuning in to me saying, "Yeah, Mom, that's definitely, wow, we really missed on that. Like, we should have had more help." And then at some point, Glenn said, "Well, I was running up and down that hill too." And I think Glenn, I say Glenn, I meant Sky. I don't know that did he acknowledge, yeah, you too, Dad, or neither of us acknowledged. It was almost like Glenn was like, hello, I ran up and down that hill too.
Right.
But
Well, and our kids are really protective of you, which is
Yeah.
awesome. I think it's great. But they just don't notice me a lot of times. And we're very close, and I know they adore me. But they're not aware that, well, dang, I did some stuff too. They're very aware that, Mom was, maxed out and not able to just be focused in on the couples that were there, because instead we're, whatever, making coffee or
right.
finding tablecloths or whatever
Right.
needed to be done next.
Well, and so that happens. Glenn does speak up for himself, but there's not an acknowledgement of yes. And I don't know that I even heard that he spoke up for himself. Like I don't even know that could have said, "Oh yeah, you did," or "No, you didn't." So then the phone call is over when we get to the theater, and we're already running late to the movie, and we love getting there early and watching the previews of the movies that are coming up, because then we can go, "Oh, we're going to go to that one, that one, that one." So we rush into the theater and don't talk about the phone call at all. And then after the movie, probably all the way home, which is not very long, we probably are talking about the movie. So we get home and we get into our room, we have a couch in our room. And so we're sitting, and part of the backstory, the device that I've been using for years and years that run my life, for whatever reason, crashed last week, right before this event. And nothing I've done, no amount of prayer has revived it. And so Sunday night is the first time I'm sitting there with Glenn, and my device is right there, and I open it just hoping that I can bring it back.
Right.
And I'm trying, like I'm going to settings, I'm trying to find what happened, what's wrong with my device, and it keeps shutting down, and then I bring it back up. So I am distracted, but it almost looks like I'm playing, solitaire on my device or something.
Right.
And I'm not communicating any of the pain I'm experiencing. I am just trying to revive my device. Glenn, in the meantime, starts sharing with me his pain of how he is not acknowledged in what he accomplishes. And he said, what would you risk if you would just say, and when our son said, "Oh, Mom, yeah, you did way too much," if in that moment, what would you risk if you had said, "Well, Sky, Dad also was running up and down that hill"? Well, this is part of my history, which is part of my trauma. Part of what's triggering is when I'm asked a question, something within me panics. And I think, risk. What would I risk? What would I risk? I wouldn't risk anything, which I think is always my go-to response. Well, I wouldn't risk anything. And then Glenn said, well, obviously you think that you do, because that's why you don't just say those things. Well, in that moment, I'm like, I don't even know what to say now, because I can't argue this case. First of all, I'm exhausted and I'm flooded, but I don't know I'm flooded, which is part of the story here.
Yeah.
I don't really realize what's happening with me. I'm just not able to tune in well to what he's asking or saying. And it's like, and I think this is where we miss each other. It is Glenn he didn't realize I was flooded. And so he didn't say, whoa, babe, what's happening right this minute with you? His questioning was all about what happened in the car.
Right.
So what was happening for you in the car? What was happening with you in that phone call? Well, I didn't really have any thought about that phone call. Like, I was not able to answer Glenn's questions at all. If Glenn had said, whoa, babe, what's happening right now in this moment? Maybe I would have slowed down myself enough to connect.
Yeah.
Maybe that would have happened. Not sure. But he didn't ask about the current. He asked about what was happening in the car. Yeah. What would you risk? What do you lose? That's another way Glenn says it at times. What would you lose if you just acknowledged me? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't think I would lose anything. And he said, well, obviously you think you're going to lose something, or you would do it. So we just spiraled really fast and really hard. And my brain is fried. I'm exhausted. I can't even answer. And then, the old stuff, right? The old stuff surfaces, and it goes back to verbiage that has been a part of our past, of Glenn just regretting that he said anything. Um, and it's a pattern. I'll let you share more
Yeah.
what happens with you with the pattern in that moment, as far as how quickly we go back to old verbiage, old patterns. And it's just crazy how quickly we can just stab each other. And it is a physical pain.
Yeah.
It's all words. It's just through words, but it feels like we have just a little ice pick, but we're just
Yeah.
stabbing. And
Yeah.
it's just this physical pain. And then what happens in that?
Yeah. And, as we always convey, we're just pilgrims on the journey that, when we use the connection codes, we connect. When we don't, we don't. We don't get a free pass because we wrote a book about it. But in that moment, you're just not aware of what's happening with you. I don't use the 3 phrases to find out what's happening with you. And that, unprocessed emotion speeds the cycle up and heads it towards the cyclone. And that's where we miss each other. And then the part of the beauty of the connection codes is that it's either party. If you had been able to be aware of what was happening with you, to go, oh, babe, so much pain about my iPad. If I had tuned into you to go, hey, what's happening for you right now? I feel like I'm missing something here, which I was. And, I just totally missed it. But either one of us, make a big shift in that.
Well, what I was referencing was specifically how quickly we can go into old verbiage,
Right.
which is an old pattern, which
Right.
is, it's such, and that, I think it's the wounding in those moments. It's like so crazy to me how quickly we almost like in the moment abandon the connection codes and we go back to old language.
Yeah.
Like Glenn will say, I'm just sorry I said anything. And that's an old verbiage. That's an old, which is so wounding, because I'm like, I want you to say whatever's happening with you. I just don't know how to answer your question because I don't feel like there's a risk for me. But then even in me responding that way, he feels that I've taken an ice pick and I've hurt him.
Right.
Like I'm not tuning into his pain. And so then it's almost like your pain may have been at a 2, but almost like every word that comes out of my mouth, now it went from 2 to 4 to 6 to 8. And before I know it, his pain level is super high.
Right.
And my pain level is super high. And we're just completely missing each other.
Right. I would also be curious to know, because I understand the freezing at questions. I experience the same type of fear. And so what it would have changed would have been like if instead of the question, it had been, I have a lot of loneliness or sadness or whatever that pain experience is, when I'm not acknowledged for doing the work that I'm doing. If Glenn had also come to you with that first core emotion that he feels, the loss of identity, and then the emotion around that loss, how that would have connected and tuned you in as well, instead of immediately the question, because then it became accusatory.
Yeah. It's really interesting.
But I did that in the car. The
Okay.
question came, and which is typically our pattern. The questions come after that. But what's happening for her, which again, I just totally missed, and I completely forgot the connection goes in to follow her energy, to tune in to her, because she's already at that point already triggered. We lost count, but I think there were like 4 or 5 in that conversation with Sky. There were like 4 or 5 emotion points for you that have already, knocked you off course.
Right.
And that you weren't processing.
And I didn't know it at all.
Right, exactly.
Like in that phone call with him,
Yeah.
I just was like, oh,
Joy.
Yeah, I'm just
Right.
experiencing joy. I mean, change is good, and I think this will be great. And so at the moment that was my first.
Yeah.
And so I stuck with the first.
Right.
And I didn't realize there was so much more. And it's just interesting that even coming home, part of the reason with my iPad crashing is that I run all of my business life through this one iPad.
Right.
And I'm not technically don't find joy in having to buy another one. And I feel it's like I lost my journal. I lost my diary or whatever. Like I think I lost my camera. Like I don't know how to I feel like this is a huge loss.
Yeah.
I don't think it's recoverable, and all the information that's in it is not recoverable. And so I'm experiencing something, but I'm not even tuning into the vastness of that pain.
Right.
So then I have a blockage in me that's not able to even hear his pain. And
Yeah, and
he, even just now, you said you had already expressed it in the car, which was probably at this point 3 hours before, because there was a movie in between.
Right.
So he just sat down, almost like continuing a conversation. I am nowhere in that car again. I am not in that same conversation at all. I have so moved on. And I am now in my own pain of my device, which I'm not saying, not even in tune with to the fullest. And then he's picking up a conversation just out of curiosity. Like, what would you risk if you said, and I hear like almost like a bulldozer just came and knocked me over.
Yeah.
And I'm already in the pit of despair
Yeah.
over my iPad. And then my response, of course, made no sense to him. And so he's like, whoa, within, I don't know, I'd say minutes, maybe it was seconds, he realizes I've just touched a topic that's off limits, which isn't true. There was all these other factors that were happening for me that I didn't realize. And then again, Glenn didn't slow himself down to go, what's right this minute happening for you? Because your reaction is not making sense. It was just so wounding to him that I wasn't tuning into his pain that it very quickly turned into a cyclone of just, it's like almost, maybe darts is a better one. There's darts are painful, but it's not a knife. It's just a little dart, but it was like immediately a dart was being thrown back and forth at each other. Yeah. And so the pain just became like, I'm sorry I even said anything. Like, as in that was the, and then at one point Glenn said to me, it's just late and you need to go to bed.
Yeah.
And what's interesting too, even in that, is a genuine love of Glenn has for me that I get tired much earlier in the night than he does. He's definitely what people call a night owl. He could stay up easily to 2 or 3 a.m. every day. I am 10 o'clock. I start to kind of wind down. I'm doing pretty good if I'm hanging at 11. So at this point, I think it's like 11:30. And after a crazy, insane, busy weekend.
Right.
So he all of a sudden realizes that. But it's funny because even with him saying, you should just go to bed, in that moment, what triggers for me is, you're such a loser and you're such a baby. And then I feel this authoritarian, he's telling me what to do. And then everything within me goes, no, I am not going to bed right now.
Right.
And matter of fact, you've got me so riled up now that I'm going to go read a book. So I just grab my robe to go in another part of the house. But as I'm walking towards the door, I realize, wait, I am exhausted. I can't go read a book.
Yeah.
Who am I kidding? And so then I turned to him and I said, I'm just going to get ready for bed.
Right.
And so then I get ready for bed, and I think that I was passed out maybe before my head hit the pillow. And so then Glenn, joins me as well. And so then, do you want me to move on to the next morning?
Well, but the extra layer of that is when your device didn't work, there's certainly pain in that. That's a very distinct pain. But then there's also the thought on top of that is, that means I have to get a new device where there's pain and learning.
But I didn't realize any of that, right?
It's probably happening for you. You're just not really.
Yeah, I'm not aware of it.
Tuned in
I just have no awareness of that.
and the fear that goes with that as well.
Right.
Yeah.
And that leads into one of those situations to where what was happening for you in that moment actually had nothing to do with Glenn.
Right.
True.
Yeah.
But it is so easy for Glenn to fill in the dots by saying, because he had a loss of identity 3 hours earlier. And so now you're not tuning into him because of something totally externally, but to him, he is filling in the dots. And I don't know what you were saying to yourself, but I know for me, I would be thinking, well, she doesn't even see me. She doesn't care about me.
Yeah.
I am not worthy of her time. She didn't identify me earlier today. She's not identifying me now. And so then it's easy to spiral from there, where you were even your pain was about something totally different than Glenn. And so that's just we do this all the time as individuals, as humans at work with our kids. I especially do it with my kids. I'm flooded about something with Wes and I, or a task or the house. Next thing I know, I'm reacting to them. It has nothing to do with them, but they are filling in those dots and they think it's all about them.
Yeah.
So now lead us into your next day.
So then I, as I said, pass out, go to sleep right away, and had the opportunity to sleep maybe an hour later than normal, but I wake up at like 6 a.m. and it was a crazy experience for me because I open my eyes and I am like punched in the face. Maybe a better way to describe it is like there's hands around my throat. And I am realizing and feeling all of the emotion that I totally did not tune into the night before. And it was like I had to get out of bed so fast. And it was early. The house was quiet. I went into our sunroom and I sat on our couch and I just began all alone letting this all out and processing what was happening to me. But when I opened my eyes the next morning, it was the panic, the fear of what I was experiencing about my device, my iPad, realizing my whole life is in that thing. And I don't know how to do this in any other way. And also, this means I have to somehow find the time. There's no time today. There's no time tomorrow to go to the Apple store and get this fixed or to buy something new. And so the magnitude of that, I felt so alone in this moment and so much fear of I cannot accomplish this. And then what flooded back in on me was the conversation with our son where all this change needs to happen.
Right.
And I was almost like I couldn't even get a deep breath because I realized that now I have to slow down enough to learn a new device, to even be able to take on a new task, to be able to figure out the next piece to all of this, to be able to make these decisions that we have to make immediately, or we're going to lose this opportunity and we're going to blow it with this opportunity. And I felt panic, like a fear set in me of, okay, if we lose part of our team and I'm on my own, we are sunk. All this work that we've done for 2 years is just going to crash and burn, and there will be no more connection codes. And I was just like, I can hardly breathe. And I'm like, just go get in the shower. So I got in the shower, and then Glenn got up early that morning unexpectedly, and he walked in, and I said, babe, I feel so much guilt that I missed it with you last night, but this is what was happening to me.
Right.
And then I started just crying, and I just started sharing about my iPad and what am I going to do? I felt so alone. Like this is a mountain. I don't know that I have the energy to climb. I have to get a new device, or I have to fix this one, and I have to learn how to do this, and I have to make the time for this, and there's no time today to do it. And I feel so much fear that if we lose the staff that we have and we have to start over, and that it's going to burn and it's just going to all crash. And what does that mean for us? And I am just speaking it and crying, and I don't cry like this very often. And I was just sobbing in the shower, and he opened the door and he's rubbing my back. And I just said it all. And wow, it was so much. And then I realized, and of course he did too, like the fact that I didn't show up for him because I was just so deep in it. And you know, what's so fascinating to me is about me and about the difference in us is that Glenn, I believe, he is able to tune in so fast,
Right.
like instant, what's happening with him in the moment. And I seem to have this delay that's sometimes 6 hours, 12 hours, a whole day of a delay of what's really happening with me. And if I don't slow down, because we hear this from others, like
Yeah.
I know I'm not alone in this.
Right.
There's definitely people listening to this podcast today that are like, oh, I am relating to Phyllis. But I think that there's times where we don't even ever allow ourselves to tune into us.
Yeah.
You know, for it's almost like, and to some, I've been on a journey for quite a while, and even more so just in the past year of getting curious about what is happening for me, allowing myself, realizing I deserve to find out what's happening with me. I
Right.
deserve to slow down. And in past, I feel like in our conflict, especially, I just want to show up for Glenn. Like I just want everything to get back to normal, let us stabilize. And I'm like, yep, I missed it with Glenn, and I just need to tune into Glenn. And so then I really miss it with myself.
Right.
And that I have to tune in to myself. But that's a scary journey
Yeah.
Wow.
to find out what is happening with me. And I'm like, wow, I'm 60 in November, and I'm just now going, wow, I deserve to find out what's happening with me. I deserve to slow down enough to go, what is happening? And I don't even know that that was a crazy experience to wake up with that, because it's almost like my psyche all night long was processing all of that. And so when my eyes open, it's almost like it just came out of me. And
Right.
it came at me, maybe like it was just there staring at me. And I'm like, wow, that is a lot. That's insane for me.
What it really seems like happened though is because you physically went to sleep, you literally slowed down. That was the first time that your body in 4 days, because the event started Thursday and really we started Wednesday prepping, that's the first time you let your body and your brain truly slow down and process everything. And we talked yesterday that one of the core lessons of the connection codes is that if we don't process, our bodies will do it for us one way or another. It will break it down for us, and it will present itself in different ways, whether it's sickness or some disorder of the psyche. There's so many ways that it can process.
Absolutely.
But you talk often about being a task-oriented person. And I think this is such a common issue for people that are so task-oriented, because we get so in the task of what we're doing that we don't realize that there's an emotion attached to it. And I'm at the point where I'm pretty well convinced that there is an emotion attached to almost every task that we do. We just don't notice it anymore. And so we were talking about this man that I was in conversation with this weekend about, he is a hunter. And because he was saying that he is similar to you, he doesn't feel his emotion in the moment. And so there's pain between he and his wife.
Can we say he's not aware of the emotion?
He's not aware of the emotion. Yes, in the moment. And so it causes conflict between he and his wife because she's processing more quickly. And so he feels dumb, like he just doesn't feel adequate because he's like, I don't have emotion, and now I feel broken because I'm not processing it quickly. And so one thing that we know about him is that he likes to hunt. And so even in his hunting, he said, I'm just sitting there. There's nothing happening with me. I'm just sitting there looking for an elk or whatever it is. And it's like, well, there could be loneliness because you're there alone, or there could be pain that you haven't seen anything yet, or that you shot and missed. But then you come home and you may be dysregulated because you experience pain, because you experience loneliness that you didn't process, and now you're in conflict. And so it's training ourselves to really tune in past the task, because he's like, I'm just sitting there with a gun. That's my task.
Right.
And that feels like a real slow task in my opinion. I would think that is slowing down, but to him, it's not slowing down because he's constantly searching for that elk.
Yeah. Wow.
And so it's really getting underneath the tasks and seeing with each task, what am I feeling with that task? What's happening there?
Yeah.
Well, it is interesting just in thinking about that, because one of the things we even suggested for him is that he do the core emotion wheel when he's alone hunting, and to just ask himself what's happening, and to actually try in the moment to go, what's been the sad in this experience? What is the loneliness in this experience? And to go there. It is interesting, because I think Glenn often shares that we share emotion in real time, which we do. We do it really well.
Right.
But sometimes, even in the exercise of the core emotion wheel, it's because there's a few that I probably express pretty easily all day long.
Right.
There's others that I don't necessarily
Mm-hmm.
touch unless we're doing the core emotion wheel.
Yeah.
And so then it's kind of realizing, all of those emotions fire in my brain. There's some I'm more in tune with than others, but it's an exercise that actually helps me to tune into my brain in all of those areas.
Right.
And it gets me to think. And there are those, and, just, we're all so different. There are those people who love to journal, love to write things down.
Right.
I am not one of those people.
Yeah.
And, I have never, that I know of, never been one of those people. And so I would rather like clean a house from top to bottom than to sit quietly and write something in a book, like write something in a journal. And it's interesting, because we had a team meeting yesterday, and our son is a part of that, and he said, Mom, I want you and Dad, to like block out a whole afternoon and just dream.
Yeah.
And then later I was talking to our older daughter, Echo, about that, and I said, we're about to go to on a big trip in a 2 weeks, and I said, you know what I need? I need someone. I don't know that we know how to do that, because I think if right now you asked Glenn to what is your dream, he'd go, I'm living my dream.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I think that I don't even know how to answer the question. Like, I think, oh yeah, let me follow suit. I am living my dream. So then Echo said, Mom, I did this not too long ago. And then she starts going through all these categories. And I said, whoa, wait a minute. I need that. Where did you get that? She goes, well, no, I just made it up. It's in my journal. And of course, she's a fantastic writer and just writes and writes and writes. And I'm like, okay, I don't want to put a pressure thing on you, but before I go on this trip with Dad, I need that. I need you to, I don't want to say a worksheet. I don't want to make it complicated for you, but I need that. I need someone to help us figure out the actual dream in every category of my life. And to be able to say, am I like at a, if it's on a scale, am I at a 10 where with my physical activity? And I know we shared in another podcast recently about like, I would like to be able to start riding a bicycle again. So then I would say, well, no, I'm not at a 10 on my physical activity. And so then that's part of the changing and looking at life. Like, what would I like my life to look like if I actually added bicycle riding? I was going to say bicycle driving. I don't think you drive a bicycle. I think you ride a bicycle. But it's kind of you got to slow down enough to do that. And for some of us, we need exercise prompters that actually get us to slow down enough to tune in to what is happening with us, to have the curiosity. And for me, it's a slow go. And I think there's others who are like that it's like, I have more difficulty tuning in to what is happening for me in this moment.
Yeah. And I think that this would be something good to know about your partner, to really have this conversation. So for this couple, knowing that he tends to process a little slower than she does. Well, if she knows this about him, she can help facilitate, give space, understand, and not necessarily make it fill in all of those blanks. Well, it's about me because he's not processing it good enough. It must be because he's angry with me and he doesn't want to communicate that to me. Yeah. And so by really learning these things about each other and meeting each other there, and for Glenn, and I understand how that you heard that of you're horrible, go to bed. You can't hang, get in the bed. I can definitely see why our psyche would tell us that that's what's being said. Because Wes and I say things to each other all the time. We're like, whoa, what did you hear me say? Because that's not the words that
Yeah,
came out of my
wow.
mouth.
That's so
And it
good.
may have been Glenn just knowing his wife
Mm-hmm.
and recognizing she is exhausted. And there may have been something in his brain at that point saying she's flooded. Like her body needs rest. She needs to slow down. And for us to like maybe have these cues
Mm-hmm.
for each other of saying, hey, we need to slow down right now and tune in to what is happening and get past the task. When you see that your partner could be flooded, get past the task and then work through the emotion of it. And I think that that is where we can really start to connect and also recognize that for you, in that moment of being flooded, your limbs were cut off.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
something that Glenn really taught Wes and I. And I went through a season of depression and a lot of pain. And Wes kept telling Glenn, like, I was a great husband. I kept telling her, call a therapist, go to therapy. Like, I'll support you. I'll take care of the kids. Go to therapy. And Glenn said, buddy, her legs were cut off at the bottom of the stairs. She couldn't call a therapist. She didn't have access to it. She was flooded.
Mm-hmm.
And so to recognize that when your partner is experiencing that flood, they need help, and they need you to come alongside them and ask, how can I partner with you right now? Is that for us to go to sleep and talk tomorrow? Is that for us to do the core emotion wheel together? Is that for me just to sit next to you and put my hand on you? How can I partner with you to work through this? So I want to go before we go into our core emotion wheel and do the key takeaways for people that are experiencing this shift in dynamic of one partner that processes more quickly, wants the other to speed up, the other one that may feel a little more slow, which may lead to feeling a little broken. How can they work through that? Key takeaways.
Yeah. Well, let me just add real quickly, because that's the whole flow, the whole objective of the connection codes, the process, the 3 phrases, getting to the 4th phrase is to find out the need. That's all we're trying to do. That's the human condition. That's what we do with our 12-month-old. We just find out their need, and then we meet that need. Well, there's no birthday where that changes. So whether it's a guy in a deer stand or whatever the situation is, the goal is for him to be able to convey to his partner what's happening for him, and to always be remembering that. And again, just as Phyllis conveyed, for her that's not always as evident. It's not always as smooth and automatic for her as it is for me. I've been focusing on this a bit longer than she has. So, and all of us are unique. All of us are different. So there are times that we just need. And there are times I'll ask Phyllis, I'll go, so babe, what's happening for you here? I feel like I'm missing something. And she'll go, I don't really know. And I go, well, what do you think you need? She's like, I have no idea. And then I'll just ask her, because I could just push her, say, no, we're connection coders. Dang it, you need to tell me right this minute, which would only shut her down more. But I'll say to her, could maybe over the next 20 minutes, hour, whatever, if anything comes to mind, could you let me know? Because I really want to know, because you really matter to me. And it's rarely 20 minutes. I mean, usually it's just a few minutes later. She goes, I was thinking about that, and I think this is what was happening for me. And again, we're just opening up that safety, that forum where she can sort through. And she may not know instantly. As we say, most of us have been walking sideways for so long. It's just muscle memory. We're not aware. It's not that Phyllis is saying, I will not tell you what's authentic with me. She's not aware herself. She's not even tuned into herself. So takeaway about
Did you say a takeaway?
I did not.
Okay.
But I'm going to.
Oh,
soon.
okay. Okay. I think the takeaway in this particular episode would be to get curious, tune in to yourself, and also know that like you deserve. For so long, I turned it where I just got stuck in the kind of in that moment, for sure, the fear of what's happening, but also like, oh, the guilt. I missed it with you. You're so, you've got so much pain. So I would just keep it there instead of going to the next level of going, wait a minute, I deserve to tune into me. I deserve to figure out me in this moment as far as, wow, what's happening for me? And I deserve to say what's happening for me.
Right.
And of course, Sunday night, I had no idea. Like, I was just exhausted. So there was a sad level that was very, very high because physical exhaustion falls in that sad region of our brain. And it was so high that I was like, I can't even, but I didn't even have the ability to say that. And so the best thing in that moment was for me to get some sleep.
You're right.
Yeah. And I guess the takeaway for me was kind of what I said, just to recognize that your partner may not know in the moment, and it may take, ideally speaking, we would love, just like we were 12 months old, we just convey it automatically. Well, we've been walking sideways so long. And we sit with couples all the time where he or she, but he'll say, no, you need to tell me the core emotion. That's what Dr. Glenn says. That's what the connection codes are all about. And he just made it 10 times worse, not better. And for him to be gentle and to just open up the space and go, oh, sad. I feel some sadness that you don't know, but you know what? I hear you. And if you figure it out in the next 10 minutes, next hour, I want to know because I want to know you because you really matter to me. Just the incredible safety of that.
Right. Yeah, I think for me, and I know that was such a pain experience. I mean, from that, really even that phone call, that afternoon, Sunday, until after probably midday Monday, just processing all of it. But for me, I think the takeaway is just from an outsider, not experiencing the pain myself, is the joy. I see so much of just like hope that couples can have because disconnects like that for Wes and I would have taken a week to get through and ended with us just not ever talking about it. Just like, okay, well, I guess today's the day I'm going to wake up and not be bitter at him, and not even intentionally, but just going through the motions or having that just blow up where there's like yelling and just, this horrible interaction that's so damaging. And so seeing that we as connection, like we can experience this conflict because there are moments that we are going to get flooded and that we are not going to be able to even know what we need. And there's going to be identity loss that the other person doesn't see, but that we now have a tool that within one day we can wake up and connect and just live this beautiful dance. Yeah. And so that's my takeaway is that even if you are processing differently, even for couples that you process fast, you process slow, that's okay. Because you are going to be able to connect with each other and figure out what it looks like for the two of you to dance together. Wow. And I love that. I have so much hope. Will y'all close us out by doing the wheel?
Yeah. So I'll start. Just in the moment, I feel really flooded with joy that I am surrounded by a team of people that know how to love me well and me beautifully. Just what happened Sunday night, in sharing it with our son, sharing it with you, Tira, sharing, of course, Glenn, and everyone just surrounded me with love and the which is so powerful, just the audible acknowledgement of what I experienced. And no one tried to fix me. Right. They just saw my tears and heard the pain and love that. I'm so thankful for that. So a lot of joy. And even how you responded when I was crying in the shower and for you to put your hand in and rub my back in the shower, just that physical touch, so much joy in that. I think that in the hurt, it was the just in the moment, that you weren't. Of course, I wasn't even aware of my own flooding, but you weren't either. So there's just hurt in that, and then sad that we still miss each other in those moments, and so quickly fall back into old verbiage that's really painful. And then loneliness in the moment, in that very moment of feeling like I feel so alone right now and I don't know how, like, it's almost like I wanted to get my brain in order, but I couldn't get my brain in order. And so I felt really alone in that. And it's like, no matter what I say, it's going to be wrong in this moment because I can't even order my thoughts.
Right.
So I felt very alone in that moment. And then definitely, I do experience shame around that I can't always get there. Like I can't in the moment seem to find, especially when I'm flooded, I can't seem to find that emotion and I can't seem to unravel it. So I do feel shame, feel guilt that I hurt you so much in those, that I don't know if it was an hour, it might have been 30 minutes, but just in that moment, I'm like, I can see the pain. I felt guilt in that, but I didn't know how to get myself into a place where I could answer better or, communicate better what was happening for me. Let's see, fear. I think I do experience a lot of fear in those moments because of our past trauma. So I feel fear that we're going to go back to living that way where our disconnects would last for weeks and that there would be just daily pain. So there are moments in that I feel the fear of, oh my word, are we going backwards deeply into that? I would say the anger is that that's part of our history. You know what I mean? Like just anger that we had so much trauma in our early years because we just didn't know. We didn't have tools. Yeah. I didn't even know I had emotion. I had no idea that was firing in my brain. So just a lot of anger for the lack of education, the lack of knowledge, the lack of community where this was talked about and taught. Wow. As a young person, I just had no clue.
Yeah, for me, I guess it started with not a ton of hurt, but a little bit of hurt. That's what's amazing to me, just the whole cycle, how it keeps speeding up from not feeling seen and hurt, but just the initial hurt that, oh, wait a minute, I'm here too. I did the same stuff, and you do more than I do, but I'm also involved in this, and I guess loneliness connected to that. That's like, hello, anybody aware of me? Am I being seen and heard? And of course, the identity loss with that, and sadness whenever we miss. Just like you said, it's like, good grief, dang it. And we don't present this at all, but sometimes there's within me just the thought that we should be perfect in this by now, especially as the founders of the connection codes, and probably some shame in that sometimes. I'm really glad that we're able to be authentic and vulnerable to people. That's a big part of our private practice, just being able to share authentically with people, which is so powerful that they get that we didn't get lucky. We're just pilgrims on the journey, just like everybody else. Guilt when I miss it with you, and even that night, like, duh, here we are. It's late at night again, which happens so easily for us. It's maddening. There's a lot of anger that we have such a ridiculous past together that because we missed so much and just had so little help along the way. Of course, that's part of what drives our passion. The core level anger goes, all right, dang it, we got to shift this culturally. Fear that we will miss it again sometime in the next days or weeks because I just hate that there's so much pain in it and tons of joy that we have a clue. And a lot of joy just seeing it. We get emails pretty much every day now from around the world. People going, oh my gosh, this is what we've been missing for 27 years. And this has filled in the blanks, filled in some gaps for us and brought us to connection that we haven't experienced maybe ever, but certainly not in a long time. A lot of joy in that.
Wow. Thank you.
Yeah. I keep thinking as y'all are sharing first, just, man, this is such a great example of how doing this exercise is so connecting. Because you're sharing things. You wouldn't know that he had that fear or that she had that guilt if you're not telling each other. And it is so connecting to hear like, oh, I have guilt that I missed with you. That's identity giving. You know,
Right,
it's like,
right.
oh, wow, yeah, you see me. You have guilt that you missed me.
Yep.
And so it brings such identity. And then also just thinking about the two of you as a couple, I get to live life with you in a really special way. And so I see how much you are together. You know, y'all are together way more as two humans than most people are on earth. You know, honestly, you work together full time. You're in his practice, you know, almost full time now. You are spending so much life with each other and still just living in this beautiful connection. So of course you're going to miss. We are humans. You're not robots, you know, and so to think that you're not ever going to would turn you into a robot. But to know that y'all do everything just about with each other, and
We
you
even
are
sleep together.
You sleep together. I
Crazy.
mean, like you do everything with each other, and you are still dancing through this life. So it just gives so much hope, you know, to the rest of us. And so if you are listening and you're like, wow, I really connect with this, you know, I'm the slow one in my relationship, and not in a bad way. I process more slowly in my relationship, or I'm the fast one and I need to actually slow down for my partner. I may need to do some slowing down. Please share this with your partner. Y'all listen together and talk about, do an issue specific wheel together about what it feels like to process emotion with each other.
Yeah.
And then find out what it would look like to partner with each other.
Love that.
So please, if you have not already given us a 5-star review or shared this with your friends, that is so helpful for us to continue to spread how we can live connected with each other.
Yeah.
So we're so thankful that you are here. And as always,
Just like us and just like the rest of the world, you need this.
You deserve this.
So let's do
do
this.
this.
let's do this.